And cue intro. I literally don't know how to start these videos. Maybe people assume that there's some kind of like production quality that actually goes into me making these things. I have no idea how to do anything with actual video production. So I know how to build the Legos, but I don't know how to make the videos. So this is like super weird for me all the time. I'm literally just filming this in my bedroom. Convenient segue. I have built the Panzer 38T out of Lego. End of statement. There's not a whole lot more needs to be said for that because it's here and it's beautiful. I just recently showed a prototype for my Panzer 38T in Lego. I just recently posted a video on that, and now I have redone the prototype into the actual tank, and here it is, all complete. So, as I've been doing in the past, I'm going to do here, in which I will showcase my model. I will take off the features and explain a little bit about how I built it, and then hopefully afterwards, I will be able to make some tutorial builds in case anyone has any interest in recreating my Panzer 38T or building it for themselves. So this is it. Full disclaimer right out the gate, because I had tried really hard to work on features and things for my other tanks, like my Panzer IV. There is no space inside of this tank. You cannot fit a minifigure in it. I figure maybe people will give me that credit though, just because I fit like guys in so many of my other tanks that it's okay that I have one that you can't fit any people in. I definitely considered that. I was on the fence trying to really sort of hash it out to be really, really uncomfortable, but still kind of work. But I figured I would want to lean more into getting some more appropriate features down for this tank, instead of trying to force it to be something that it wasn't. So there's no inherent space for guys inside of this tank, which is fine. That being said, I still worked on a different function that I will explain in just a minute here. But yeah, so this is the model. I'm gonna go over like the tiny, like super brief synopsis on the history of it, which is super boring, but that's kind of just for me because I like these kinds of things. The Panzer 38T was annexed Czech armor from Czechoslovakia that was used by the German army at the beginning of World War II. I explained a little bit of what it is. You obviously can look it up and know what it is. It was a fairly effective light tank that was built primarily in Czechoslovakia, but then manufactured for the German army. Yeah, it made up a lot of the early Panzer divisions and was used primarily during the Blitzkrieg section of the Second World War. And considering that I have an early Panzer IV model, I thought it would be nice to make another Blitzkrieg tank to potentially do like a mock with it. But other than that, that's all that there really is to it. It was very simple, it was very effective, it was well made, and it served exactly what it needed to do on the battlefield and was well liked by its crews generally. So what is the Panzer 38T? It's a light tank. It's very, very compact, very clean, something I tried to recreate here in Lego. People could probably guess this from how they've seen some of the other models that I've built. I like to build in sort of a retro style. I don't like to really captivate too much on really complex pieces because I don't like those as much. I prefer more of the retro ones and the old style ones to kind of make kind of a vintage looking build, which is fun because I'm doing vintage vehicles here anyway. I used a few more complex pieces, like some of these inverted connectors that I used on this, and pieces like my periscope. I ultimately could have used more. I still toned it back, just for the convenience of other people being able to build it. That's kind of how I like to design them, just as it is. I think the model looks really good. The scale was something I tried to focus on. The length is appropriated to the length of my Panzer IV, which is roughly 20 to 21, 22 feet. And this one is similar. It's supposed to be closer to 13, I think, as far as I know. And it's somewhere around there. So I'll show a size comparison between the Panzer IV, which I also have here, and this one. So I think they look really good together. Aside from that, I didn't try to lay too heavy in on the details because obviously there's room for lots of modification. But I didn't want to completely add too much to it and overdo it, so that it just kind of looks nice as it is here. So it's fairly simple. It's very simple looking build considering it took so long for me to build. It was actually kind of a grueling process as it usually is, which is annoying because at the end it usually ends up looking pretty stupid simple. I have a few parcels on the outside of this. I added lots of extra studs. Plenty of the features could be changed to be able to compensate for more things. I have plenty of extra like sort of bits and pieces on the outside of this, which I'm going to take off and show the base tank here. So I'm gonna do that real fast, and then we can look at kind of just what the body of the actual tank looks like, and then I will show the only function that I actually managed to get the tank to actually have. I build my decorative equipment the same way that I build my tanks, which is fairly rudimentary, just to sort of not overcomplicate them, because I don't feel like it needs that much. The actual tank is fairly clean. Funnily enough, a lot of the shaping came fairly naturally when I was building this, and a lot of the issue I had was sort of just changing color variety. And I kind of just sort of chose a lot of arbitrary colors, and I wanted it to be very similarly matched to my Panzer IV color scheme because I figured they were same era tanks, but I wanted it to look a little bit more strange because it was built obviously in a different country. But I honestly really like this model a lot. I think it's pretty good, all things considered. I didn't add a lot of the extra features. Obviously, there's no hatches that open. The gun doesn't elevate or depress. I didn't even add the extra machine gun that goes right here next to the main gun. Just because I kind of liked it the way that it was, and I didn't want to overcomplicate it. And I think it's a pretty modest build. I really like the way that sort of doing it a little more simply as opposed to making it complex. The only real feature this actual thing has is the rotating turret. None of the other doors open or guns elevate depress, like I mentioned, and then the tracks roll incredibly well. So that was one thing I was really tried to captivate on, was making treads that worked fantastically well, because a lot of people who build tanks, especially the tanks that are the smaller models, the light tanks, I'm sorry to say that I see a lot of people who do it poorly and their treads don't roll. So that's the only exception I have to have on my tanks, is that the treads work gloriously well, which in this one is one of my all-time best wheel systems, I think, personally. And I'm really glad that I got this chassis figured out, because it means that I could do any of the other tanks that were used by Germany at the time that used the same wheel system. I want to say that their very similar wheel system were used on some flak panzers, and also the Hetzer, or the Jagdpanzer 38T, which I think would be kind of nice to build as well, because I have this wheel system. It's pretty much like the hard stuff's out of the way, and now I just have to do the rest, which is not so bad. But I'll have to work on some Hetzer prototypes or something like that. So the build is very simple as it is. There's only one big surprise I have left. I made a system here in which if you rotate the turret sideways and then lift the exhaust pipe, there is a storage bin. Full disclaimer, this is very obvious, but full disclaimer, the tank did not actually do this. There was a hatch on the top here to be able to access the engine, but it didn't open anything like this. This was a feature I merely added in compensation for the fact that I couldn't actually fit people in it or open hatches. So I was being picky about it, but this is something that I just did. And I can't imagine that I'll pour this out too gracefully, but I have actually put things inside of it. I chose to make this sort of just a supply tank because I wanted a chance to be able to actually use some of the space inside instead of just sort of clog it up with bricks, because then you're using more pieces for something that doesn't do any good. The hatch just opens up and there's a little bed in there. I don't know if you can see that. There's just a little bunch of little tan pieces in there. And then aside from that, that's pretty much all there is to it. I thought it would be fun to make a light tank that is a supply vehicle that carries some actual things. So what I have made is a fire extinguisher. I have 2 tools here, and I have a bag. So you could ultimately put anything in here. I just did this sort of as an example to show off what the point of this actual thing is. I considered using the inside space to actually try to store a minifigure, but just with the width of it and my sort of how thick bricks are, you ultimately have to like pull the arms off a guy, which is like super ungainly and weird. So I just didn't bother, and instead I have this neat little feature instead of wasted space in which I can store stuff. So you could put rations in there or tools or something, and you can actually make a tank that hauls stuff, which I thought was kind of fun. And I think it's a better use of the space than just filling it in with nothing at all. So it's not really wasted. It actually adds a little bit of play feature, a little bit of fun, and a little bit of mystery to a build that is fairly rudimentary collectively. And the last thing I wanted to mention was the comparison between my other Blitzkrieg era tank, which is my Panzer IV, which I have right here. This is my fully modified version of the Panzer IV because I went back and I built it from the ground up, and I made small changes that in the long run I think make it look a lot better. That's a little more complex than the actual build. So we'll take a quick look at that because it's kind of fun. I worked on that a little while ago just for fun because I have plans for a Blitzkrieg mock right now. I don't know that it's going to come to fruition, but I'm thinking about it, and it helps to have more vehicles like this. This is my Panzer IV. Obviously it is a medium, as people well know, and the 38T is a light. But I wanted to show just a quick size comparison here because I think they look so nice together, and they're sort of very similar era tanks. Used in obviously the same war. So I think they look pretty good. I tried to match the color schemes very similarly because not only were the German tanks of the period painted in this dark gray color actually, but they also were kind of engineered similarly and used in similar formations. So I think it's nice to be able to have this contrast. I think it's cool to be able to have a small vehicle and a big one. I think it would be a really artful comparison to be able to have them in a build together. And I think they look really nice. Obviously the Panzer 38T is smaller, which is something I intentionally tried to do. I tried to scale them in contrast to each other fairly well. And it took a little bit of sort of science, a little bit of hashing out. I think that it's okay collectively. But they're both really good looking models, and I'm really proud of them and being able to have a chance to sort of show them off and share them too, which is kind of fun. So yeah, this is my Panzer 38T. I think it's a pretty decent build. It's something that I tried to make very simple. So there's a lot of features that maybe you could have added if you wanted it to be sort of extra special or extra novel. I did stuff like, oh, there's just antenna, which, you know, you don't have to have, or you could add an extra machine gun or something here too. I built sort of just the rudimentary base version of it so that I could be able to modify it if I wanted to. And then also other people could modify it if they want to. Like I mentioned at the beginning, though, the plan is ultimately to have tutorials for this, just like I had for the Panzer IV, so people will have a chance to build it if they like. But I think it's pretty good. It's a neat little model. I think it's really cool. It's funny, it kind of just barely sits in the palm of my hand. That's how small it is. This is the smallest tank that I've ever made. And I really like it. I think it's very nicely scaled in contrast to the other scaling of my Panzer IV, which is still bigger than it's supposed to be, but we don't talk about minifigure scale. That's kind of a painful topic. So I think it's very nicely scaled to a minifigure. I think it's really nicely scaled to the Panzer IV. So it looks pretty good, and I'm just delighted to be able to get a chance to share it. So tutorial's coming soon. Thanks for coming along and checking this out. Another one of my weird little projects. I know it took me a bit to put it together, but I'm very proud to share it, and I'm glad that all the hard work paid off.